Howdy, my friends. I'm gonna play a soft guitar 'cause my baby's sleeping not very far. Just through the wall, would you know? And she's gone down a dreaming so, so good, so true. Oh, little baby brain exploring, so feeling everything's coming into view. Gonna talk about relationships. Gonna give it all up to the bliss. Gonna investigate some things. Gonna admit where I'm suffering. Gonna tell you a thing or three. Gonna ask for ye to come and see. Gonna try to get down to this. Gonna ask you all for an uplifted kiss. Not asking you all to kiss me, but it's just the rhyme. So let's see here. It's a bit late. What time is it? According to my here pocket watch, it is 10 past 9, almost, or 8 past 9. So, relationships and don't know what I'm going to call this, but I want to talk about relationships. So, I guess, yeah, why? I guess why to uh, want a relationship, or why you want a relationship. Um, So, like, you might think, well, relationships are complicated, you can get hurt, people, you fight, you might have different opinions, you might grow apart, and that could be painful, or, they might get jealous, or, they might try to control you, you might try to control them, you might get jealous. Um, and like, oh, wouldn't it be simpler to just get all the benefits of like sex and sexuality and flirtation and attraction, passion, and the kind of sweet stuff even of like affection and little butterflies and all that, and the companionship of just talking or whatever. You couldn't kind of just get the companionship and stuff from your friends and get the hot and spicy stuff from like hooking up with people, and then once it gets a little bit boring or a little bit problematic, okay, time to move on, find someone else. Um, and you could do that, and you guess you'll have a good life if you structure things right. But for one thing, yeah, I think relationships can give you all of that and much more. So the thing that's missing there is self growth. So obviously you can grow from like brief little relationships, but I think the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and there's kind of like an exponential growth curve from being with one person for like a long time. So just like if you keep changing bandmates, oh yeah, every month you're not going to turn into the Beatles. You need to like develop together and kind of get deep into it and figure stuff out. So say with a relationship, um, like apart from the fact that you can have a family, which is really incredible, and I think as you would imagine, but like, oh, I don't know, I think I've been pleasantly, I wouldn't really say surprised, but like confirmed in the value of having kids, like, or our kid, um, and like it just simplifies life, and it's incredibly beautiful and grounding, and it's just wonderful. I'd highly recommend it to everyone, and yeah, makes you a better person, more responsible. But then it's like you have less free time, but then the free time you do have, you enjoy more. And I think over and then there's this person in your life, and so this new beautiful person, and yeah, I think yeah, it's a positive. Like the what you get is far more than you're losing. Um, and so but that's family. But even just if apart from that, just in a relationship. So when you're in a relationship, yeah, you force each other to grow. So you can grow just from inspiring each other and talking to each other, but you could do that with friends as well. But with a relationship, so you're seeing each other very regularly, and then eventually, you're you're living together, um, and you're gonna start to notice parts of each other which are out of sync. So the things that are in sync, that's all fine, like, um, but you'll start to notice things where you disagree and maybe you have an argument or whatever. So in a nutshell, you might think that that's bad, but I think I'm going to make the case that look, you just have to navigate it, and then again, you're getting much, much more than you're losing. You know, what is taken from you through that is nowhere near as great as what you are given from that. So basically, you cultivate patience, you know, you cultivate empathy, you cultivate communication, and eloquence, well, articulation, the ability to kind of put your point of view forth, to understand the other person, to negotiate, yeah, be patient, like, bear with them. You get, accused of something, you're like, that's completely unfair. But you might notice over time, if you get too outraged, like, usually it just spirals out of control. Okay, that didn't really work. And then eventually, like, wait a minute, I'm going to try a new strategy. What about if I just stay calm, look them in the eyes, and just try to connect to a place of, tenderness, and, you know, just say, look, and don't take the bait. And then they can join you where you are. They go, oh, actually, that seems much nicer. Well, yeah, I don't know why I started going down this dark road. Yeah, I'll come back to where you are. That's nice. Um, and so you learn kind of emotional stability and independence, and you learn from each other. And you might even notice certain things where, oh, the other person isn't learning in this thing. And then you might have to figure out a way to bring it to their attention in a nice, friendly way. Compliment constructive criticism. Compliment, you know, like a constructive criticism sandwich where the compliments are the bread. Um, and or whatever, and you might, yeah, there's a balance between, strategy and authenticity and spontaneity, where, you don't want to be too calculating and trying to, change them or in some unreasonable way. But also sometimes if you just say things straight, it might not be acceptable or digestible. And so sometimes I think there is a role for being, wise about, or tactical to some extent, because if it's coming from a place of trying to liberate, not to control, but to liberate that person to be their best self. And if you trust yourself, that, yeah, I'm not straying out of line here. This is uh, just reasonable, just in the interest of truth and growth. Then you can, there's a certain, then I think you're allowed to kind of have a certain element of, you know, saying things in the right way. But anyway, these are the kind of things you can learn and figure out, like, oh, what's the right. And so here's one thing, probably the main thing I'll talk about, and then that'll be it, is who should change. So there's this idea, like, I think a lot of what people might think is love, or like, in relationships, is like using. Eckhart Tolle calls them like relationships where one it's like, it's not really love, it's like needing. It's a neediness kind of thing, where you're trying to use the other person to fill a hole in you. And that's one thing that the ego does in general, or like, kind of the human self, when you don't have that spiritual dimension of just being there. It's like spirit as consciousness, you know, meaning intelligence without the thinking, without the words, which is totally possible. Highly check out episode 7, Awakening, or read The Power of Now, or watch a video with Eckhart Tolle, or other teachers, but he's, I think, probably the clearest for me. Anyway, but yeah, so in general, the ego, tries to like just use people and use things and use everything. Um, and we often do that with people, and someone who's intimate with you, you might feel like you can get away with more because, that you're very intimate. So yeah, sure. How intimate, how intimate is my fist? Sorry, dark joke. But yeah, so I think, um, there's this tendency to be like, okay, someone said, like, here's the deal. You'll be who I want you to be, and in exchange, I'll be who you want me to be. Which is of course awful and tragic, because then, neither of you is dating a real person. You know, there's just these two um, zombies, these two, you know, avatars, and the two souls are nowhere to be seen. They're just asleep. You know, kind of like a suicide pact. Um, uh, or a comatose pact, um, coma pact. But yeah, so I think it should be okay. I want, like, say, even in a relationship, if I like someone and they don't like me back, actually, I don't want to be with them. Say I want to be with you and you want to be with me. Perfect, great. But if one of us doesn't want to be with the other, then actually neither of us deep down really wants to. We might not realize it, but deep down, it's not just that you shouldn't want it, but it's that you don't want it. Deep down, we don't want things that we shouldn't want. Deep down, you are logic itself. You are, you know, pure reason and intelligence, you know? And the fact is, like, yeah, deep down, you don't want to be with um, someone who, you know, doesn't want to be with you. So, okay, I thought maybe you want to be with me and maybe I can try and keep pushing, maybe even for a long time to try to persuade you. But if eventually I'm like, no, like deep down, I think this person just doesn't, in this experience at this time, this soul does not want to be with me. Maybe they never will, but um, then it's like, okay, great. I don't, I guess it turns out I don't want to be with you because, um, so yeah, it takes two to tango, you know? Um, so but then once you're with each other, it should be you know, authentic self-expression. So you be yourself and they be themselves, and you find a way to make that work. Um, and I think let's see, yeah. So basically, I think a useful way to think of it would be there's like kind of three areas, right? Imagine you got like a rectangle, slice it into three. All right. On one end, you've got um, and things where we're on the same page. That's fine. We don't need to talk about it. It's like, okay, great. Well, actually, I guess we could. So let's say on the same page, you know, when you're like, you know, there's things where it's we talk about, yeah, where you're in sync, and then also where you're not in sync. So when you're in sync, you know, it's either good. Well, it's all like, yeah, great, we get on, good. But that could be healthy or it could be unhealthy, you know? Maybe you're both into heroin, you know? It's like, okay, maybe you shouldn't be doing that. Um, but then maybe you're both into, you know, yoga. Okay, that's great, you know? Or you both like, you know, speaking very directly. Maybe that's a good thing. Um, or you both like to hit each other. Okay, man, it's not a good thing. Um, so I'd say when you're in sync, we should just be aware that we need to think, is this um, a healthy thing, or is this kind of like codependency or whatever, where, you know, you're kind of allowing the other person to feel like they don't need to change. You're giving them a justification. Um, okay, so that's that. But then when you're not in sync, that's usually more of the issue. Um, I think that you could slice the rectangle into three. One end is we could say is there's some things where it's just say me, um, I am the way I am, and I can't like to live my life and to be happy is part of my authentic expression. This is a deal. This is it. I'm not going to change this as a deal breaker. You know, you can walk away if you don't want to be involved. You know, but like this is who I am. This is part of my soul's journey, and I'm not going to change that. You know, and you can accept that, or you can, go leave. You know, you can go. We can part ways. You know, and there are things like that where, no, I'm not gonna, you know, stop doing this thing I like doing, or I know I'm not gonna start doing that thing you want me to do. So either way, it's you're in opposition to the will of the other, but it's something where it's right for you. What you're doing is right, and the other person just has to adapt. But then likewise, the reverse is true for them, right? There's certain things where your partner, it's just part of who they are, and you don't like it, but actually you just need to learn to accept it. Or if you can't accept it, you don't want to, then you have to walk away because that's part of who they are, you know? And you just have to, that's it. Same as, you now in the middle, there's things where it's not that deeply part of who you are or who the other person is, right? It's kind of the middle ground, and that's what you need to negotiate over. Um, and so it's not something you need or they need, it's something that you want or they want. And then I think you need to kind of basically just talk it out and figure out like, okay, what rationally makes sense, like, objectively, as much as we can. So try to, use logic and evidence and, argument, open-mindedness married with critical thinking. So just like the whale, okay, hope you like my whale impression. It lets in all the water, and then it lets all the water out, but its bristles are closed. Its mouth is closed, but the water can get through the bristles, and the krill and plankton or whatever that all stays. Not plankton, is it? No, krill eat plankton, is it? Whatever. Yeah, the food stays inside. The itty bitty bits of food that all stays inside the whale. Happy whale, good. In the similar way, I think we should be completely open-minded. Let everything in. Don't be afraid of letting in other ideas, because how do you know that the ideas you have are the right ones and the ones outside you are the wrong ones? That's an assumption. Maybe that's one of the ideas that belongs outside. How do you know it belongs in here? So really, you just need to trust yourself to be able to constantly improve the system of believe, um, what you believe to be true and right, or true and good, you could say, right in two senses. Um, and so, yeah, let it all in. And, the only reason you would be worried about, okay, you let it all in, but then you use critical thinking to check stuff, and you go, okay, is that true or this? And you try to see if you can prove it right. Does it match with other things in my experience? Okay, and then also, does it match within itself? Is it logically cohesive? Does it contradict itself in any way? Okay, um, and then do the opposite. Go, okay, let's try to prove it wrong. Does it contradict with anything around it in the context of what I know? And within itself, can it, yeah, so contradict itself. So try to prove it right, try to prove it wrong. You can flip back and forth if you want. Um, like a samurai sword, they beat it back and forth like 1,000 times and it made the steel extremely strong. You can do that with your mind or your ideas. As samurai smiths enlighten steel, as the poet says. Um, yeah. And so uh, let it all in and then question everything. And, I think that, then things that don't make sense, that's the water that, gets ejected from the whale's mouth. And then the truth, the things you figure out, that is the happy, delicious plankton and or krill for your digestive tract, spiritually speaking. And so yeah, do that with your partner, and you just talk things through. And if things get too heated, you could take a break. All right, you know, let's agree on some basic things. Okay, we can talk about this more later. I think it's always good to try to talk things through before you go to sleep. Try not to like push it under the rug, Try to deal with it before you go to bed. So you can go to bed, snuggling and on good terms. Occasionally, maybe it won't be possible, but you should try to and make sure you're both devoted to, you know, and look, you can have unhealthy relationships too, or quasi-healthy relationships. But if you want, what I'm advocating is a proper healthy relationship. And that requires a mutual devotion to truth and to honesty, and integrity. But basically, honesty, you could say, openness to truth. Um, and so that's kind of a deal breaker for me, for example. And I think it should be for everyone. Um, and and you should also, demand that the other people help you to realize where you're wrong, not just like, oh, I'm gonna try to figure out. I require the other person to be really honest and perfect, but also me, and to be aware that we have blind spots, things where we just have no idea. So it's good to kind of always have a little doubt in your mind of like, okay, maybe I'm wrong about this, and at least saying it, even if you don't believe it, just saying it. You should say what you believe in general, but I think it can be useful just to say like, okay, look, I don't know. In theory, maybe you're right, but I don't know. I don't think so. I feel like I'm right here, and you know, but to try to empathize and yeah, figure it out, negotiate it, and usually one of you will want the thing more than the other, and that's probably the person who should keep it. Like okay, we're fighting over this thing, and I'm more devoted to figuring out why information which backs up my case than you are, and so then in conversation it makes your point look worse. Maybe you're even right. Maybe I'm I'm wrong, but I'm just putting more time into it. Okay, maybe if you end up being like, oh, okay, maybe you're right, maybe I earned it, and that's how the way it should be. And you should be, if you want it, you should be motivated to try to make the case for it. And I think kind of negotiate that. And yeah, you can have stronger personalities, people who are just very argumentative, or also people who are just very let's say uh, intelligent, or very very good at like figuring things out. And they could maybe the whole thing of like a little knowledge is can be a dangerous thing. They might just be very good at finding little chunks which justify their thing, and then making it seem good. But if you're dating someone like that and you don't realize it, and you don't want well, that's kind of your fault, isn't it? It's like you should be, you get the people um you kind of deserve in some sense. Like I think if you don't want to be with someone like that, then you should communicate that to them, and if they won't change, then you leave them. You'll find someone who resonates. um so I think basically you can know with the person you're with, if you think, yeah, they're a good person, they're honest, da, 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 then you should be able to figure out those things in the middle, that middle area, through just conversation. No need to manipulate, no need to censor, or no need to but oh, here's something I know is true, but that doesn't really serve my argument. Maybe I won't mention it. I think it's actually much better to go like, well, look, okay, here's one thing in favor of what you're saying, but I still think I'm right. Um, and actually, that's kind of genius move, I think, because well, because it's honest, but also it shows the other person like, okay, all right, you just told me something which undermines your argument a little bit, but actually, I like that. Like, okay, that makes me kind of think, okay, you're probably being honest in this process, right? And you still think you're right. Okay, well, if you're just some crazy guy trying to manipulate me, why would you have told me that? Unless you're playing 3D chess. But yeah, anyway, so you get the idea. Um, and I think over time doing this, you can really grow so much throughout life. Like in my relationship, which I'm blessed to have, we always talk things through, and you know uh, yeah, don't always agree on everything, and even and there's also emotions involved and things, perhaps certain waves that come and go, which may affect emotions, and you know that you just ride the waves and try to figure things out. Um, but I think, yeah, naturally you'll be more in sync at some points, less in sync at other points. But we're here floating in space, and let's relate, let's connect. And like it doesn't need to be perfect, and in fact, imperfection is perfect and perfection is imperfect. It's like the yin yang thing, the white dot and the black dot and the white. And so I think if you find someone who makes you happy and who you make happy, um, you know, like why not spend time with them and share life. And you might be love at first sight, or you might kind of feel like a strong attraction, and then that might grow over time. And I think there's many kind of paths that love can take. um and so, and everyone's unique, and everyone's come from many different paths. So someone could be dealing with trauma, which kind of closes them off in certain ways, and you might feel like, oh, that person I don't quite resonate with. But that might just be that they've got their barriers up for some reason, and with time you might go, oh my god, you're the one I've been looking for. um and likewise, you may have some weird things which are deterring them, but over time they might be able to help you to kind of let go of that stuff as well. And I think ultimately it's like living with someone, being in a relationship. Basically, it's like a mirror. They show you yourself, and sometimes we don't like that. We don't like to be shown who we are, because we see our shadow. The parts of ourselves we like to avoid. um, but that's a good thing ultimately, because it expands your consciousness. It makes you more aware, and then you have to bury it and be unhappy, or address it and have a clear conscience and evolve as a person. And um and I think if the greater the number of people who are having like long-term relationships, the more sane and stable and beautiful and kind and aware and wise our culture will be and our world. And therefore all the animals and all the plants and all of nature, Mother Nature, will thrive dependent upon how sane human beings are. So, by having a relationship, you can cultivate your sanity and the sanity of your partner and the sanity of everyone who comes into contact with the both of you, and the sanity of your children. And, so help the world, and yourselves. And you are the world anyway. But hey, let's kind of keep this slightly focused at least. So, anything to add? Nothing? Anything to say for the people on the internet? No, okay. She's quiet. You can see her through my eyes, through the light in my eyes. Okay. So, all right, everyone, that's it. Wishing you all the love. All right. Peace.